If there's anything that the bourgeoisie actually fear, it's regulation of their harmful actions, or even worse, nationalization, because the sanctity of private property should never be infringed upon, unless of course they're receiving large subsidies from the US government. But this threat is now one that Google faces in Ohio. The state of Ohio has decided that Google is too powerful and that it needs to be brought under regulation as a public utility due to its discriminatory and anti-competitive practices, according to the Ohio government. The state seeks to place so-called harsh regulations over the internet giant, which has come to dominate not just the internet, but our lives as well. A common carrier, that is what Ohio would like it to be, and this is what was announced by the Attorney General, Dave Yost. Now, he says that with this classification, it would fall under the Public Utilities Commission of the state. Google uses its dominance of internet search to steer Ohioans to Google's own products. That's discriminatory and anti-competitive. When you own the railroad or the electric company or the cell phone tower, you have to treat everyone the same and give everybody access. Now, the concern that Yost and the state of Ohio have is the no-click searches. Basically, when you're looking for something or not directly looking for something, products and services get suggested to you that give preferential treatment to Google over its competitors. And this, according to legislation that already exists, is essentially illegal. These are what's called antitrust laws. Now, it's already a reality that large companies like Google and Microsoft already suffer from a great deal of antitrust lawsuits because of the way that they continue to behave. The proposed law states that Google has a duty not to artificially prioritize Google services and links higher than they would be displayed as a result of Google's internet search algorithms, in which the algorithm is not programmed to prioritize Google's owned products and services. Now, Google has dismissed the lawsuit, saying that essentially that it's nonsense and that it's not something that's going to work in court. They already say that their algorithm in searches is already designed to find the best products and services for the person that's actually searching, and that Ohioans really don't want their internet to be regulated the same way as would electricity or water in this case. As a spokesman for Google said, Google Search is designed to provide people with the most relevant and helpful results. Attorney General Yost's lawsuit would make Google Search worse and would make it harder for small businesses to connect directly with customers. Ohioans simply don't want the government to run Google like a gas or electric company. This lawsuit has no basis in fact or law and will defend ourselves in court. Many a commentator have claimed that this is a power grab designed to limit the power of big tech, with the eventual goal of nationalization. This process, they claim, is designed to skirt the law in order to characterize it as a public utility, so that it can be declared one in the future. They feel it is a threat to Google's constitutional right to freedom of speech, because corporations are legally people. Now, it's pretty hard to argue that Google doesn't have power over our daily lives. I mean, when you sit down and you really think about it, and you really consider how much influence Google has over everything it is you do, particularly with regards to what ads that you see, Google AdSense, they're essentially deciding based on an algorithm what you need to see in terms of advertising, in terms of suggested things for you. Hey, if you like this thing, then you'll like this thing. And consider how much market power that actually really is. Not to mention having any kind of those Alexa-type devices in your home or Google Home or stuff like that, which essentially is right inside your house and is connected to everything that you do. The music you listen to, your shopping habits, everything you do online, and it knows everything as a result. Some real 1984 kind of stuff that people so willingly take into their own lives. So it's pretty hard to deny that Google itself actually has a great deal of power over the daily lives of the average American. But it's funny here, seeing that Google doesn't want any kind of regulation. They don't want to be controlled in some way, to be held accountable for their antitrust actions. I mean, they've been sued again and again and again, and many of those lawsuits have been successful, showing how Google deliberately undermines a lot of the competition. And Microsoft does the same thing. I mean, imagine that. A capitalist would do something to maintain its own dominant position within the market and a tendency towards monopoly. Kind of like Marx wrote, like in, the 1850s, 1840s, thereabouts, that this was a tendency of capitalism that continued to happen over the centuries that the system has existed. But they don't seem to have any problem taking money from the US government. As it stands, Google already receives almost $1 billion in subsidies from local governments and state governments. That's $1 billion in taxpayer money, and then would ask to give absolutely nothing in return. It's even questionable how much in taxes Google even pays. But they're very free and very happy to take money from the public. But to provide any protections for the public? Oh, well, that's simply just going way too far. And just shut up and give us your money, according to them. Now, you notice, this isn't being done to Amazon. Now, Google faces lawsuits like this in other places, other jurisdictions in the United States, but not Amazon. Why is that? You remember a previous video that I made about Amazon and that their connections to the US government were growing, becoming larger, becoming much more powerful so they could avoid situations like this. And that was one of the things that I put out and showed that I had a concern over, that it would be harder to regulate Amazon because of its government connections. And in turn, Amazon could even theoretically threaten the US government. Well, basically all your information is on our servers. It would be a real shame if that disappeared or got released to the public, because God knows what kind of dirty secrets the FBI, the CIA, and the NSA are hiding. But that was one of the things I was concerned about, an inability to be able to regulate it because its connections to the US government are too powerful. And I think that we're seeing some limited manifestation of that right here, a connection that Google doesn't have. In the end, it's very typical that you would have this whole situation where Google feels that it has the right to undermine its competitors and shift everything towards itself. I mean, we know this from the unending amount of antitrust lawsuits that have been successful against Google and companies like Microsoft, and even some against Amazon. But isn't that the real irony here, that the biggest promoters and propounders of the free market, those who have been the most successful at using the free market, have been entirely hypocritical the entire time? They'll take billions in state money to fund themselves and then give nothing back. And the best example of that being Amazon. What taxes does Amazon ever pay? Yet it perfectly is happy to take millions, if not billions of dollars from the US government, demand tax subsidies or tax breaks from local governments so that they'll put an Amazon warehouse there. Isn't that great? Like, that's supposed to be the greatness of the free market, is that anybody could choose, and that, there's perfect knowledge fallacy, all kinds of things to foster competition, because that's what the market does. It creates competition. And that's what's good about capitalism, is that it has competition. Yet every capitalist is always trying to limit the amount of competition possible, thereby being a completely self-defeating idea in terms of capital itself. But what should we expect? The capitalists not to do what would be most in their own rational self-interest, and that would be monopolization. So as much as this is an irony, it's really not. It's really just the functioning of the system itself, and that's what we're going to continue to see in this situation. Because, I mean, what is it that we should expect out of Google? That we would ever expect out of Amazon or Microsoft, etc.? To deliberately undermine themselves and undermine their own profit motive? Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.